Thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Tiffany Rozier, soon to be on the Board of Governors starting tomorrow, right, Tiff?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So I'll pass it over to Tiff and we'll get this thing started. Tiffany, it's all yours.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I want to welcome everyone. As Dustin mentioned, my name is Tiffany Rozier, and I'm one of your ILEA Regional Vice Presidents, as Dustin said, for about 24 more hours, a little bit here. I don't know if I'll be able to sleep tonight, but until tomorrow at our ILEA Annual General Meeting, where I will become one of our ILEA International Board of Governors. So more to come on the AGM in just a few minutes. Today, I'm joined by Dustin Westling, one of my fellow Board of Governors, who will moderate today's Q&A with our keynote speaker, Pierre. And I'll introduce Pierre here in just a moment. So first of all, on behalf of our entire international leadership team and our local chapters, I want to say a huge thank you to all of our incredible members. This community really is powerful, and without dedicated and committed members like you, we can't produce these kinds of really valuable webinars. So we are very grateful to be a part of this organization and this industry with you, and especially now. So to those of you who are on the call who are not ILEA members, we welcome you here, and I encourage you to stay in touch with your local ILEA chapter if you have one, or with our ILEA headquarters to hear more about why this community will truly change the course of your life and your business and your career. And if you want just more information, you can always check out www.ileahub.com for tons of resources. That's probably how those of you who are not members found information about today's webinar, and also more information that we have that is available to all of our event professionals. And to everyone, welcome to today's ILEA keynote webinar about UVC lighting, innovation and the future of safe events. Thank you to our amazing friends and partners at Giant Enterprises. They've come on board to sponsor our industry recovery webinars, including today's ILEA keynote presentation. What this partnership enables us to do is ensure that we bring you rich, relevant, and massively useful virtual content throughout the year, and specifically focused on empowering you, the events professional, through recovery. And here's a snippet about our amazing partners at the Giants. So Giants Enterprises is dedicated to the curation and development of new ventures complementary to the San Francisco Giants franchise by delivering larger than life experiences to millions at Oracle Park and beyond. Giant Enterprises creates memorable events abundant with excitement and engagement, both virtually and in person, for their varied partners, as well as local and international visitors. Positioned at the intersection of sports, entertainment, meetings, events, tourism, and hospitality, Giants Enterprises provides the rare combination of people, experiences, and platforms necessary to create giant impressions. Thank you so much to our friends at Giant Enterprises. And before we get started with Pierre's presentation, I wanted to run through some virtual events that we have coming up this week and review some logistics for today's call. So we have, of course, our ILEA annual general meeting. So this is something that is specifically for our members only. So tomorrow we'll be hosting this general meeting. It's going to really be a fun gathering of our community to celebrate successes and the triumphs we've all had in these and in overcoming these unprecedented odds. We'll be reporting on our financials. We'll be welcoming our new leadership team, and of course, more fun surprises. So if you're a member, make sure to go to ileahub.com and register. And if you're not a member, go ahead and join today, and then you can register, and then we'll see you all there. So next up is our great series that we've continued to have is the Clear Head, Strong Mind. And on Thursday, we have our final Clear Head, Strong Mind session of the summer. Before we regroup and redesign what's next for our performance coaching initiative. Make sure to join us for this heartfelt and science-based conversation with Angela Braun, discussing how to design powerful habits and stick with them, ultimately creating the future you want to create. So yes, even amidst COVID-19, all of the teachings within the Clear Head, Strong Mind series are based in science and will give you a new toolkit that is proven to yield big results, especially now. And I think we need that more now than ever. So head over to ILEAHub.com and register now for our final Clear Head, Strong Mind webinar of the summer called The Power of Habits. And I also hear that there's a musical surprise and a few giveaways, so make sure that you check it out. So, okay, so back to today. So let's talk about some logistics and then get into the content. So today's webinar logistics. So the chat box is for sharing thoughts and comments amongst the audience. Please feel free to share openly. The Q&A area is for questions that you want answered by Pierre, and we will moderate these accordingly. We won't be moderating questions in the chat area, so if you are going to ask a question, please make sure that you use the Q&A function to ask questions for Pierre. And I suggest trying to use clear, concise, and specific questions so that Pierre can actually respond to your question with hopefully the answer you're looking for. The promote is the like questions in the Q&A that you see in the Q&A box to promote them to the top of the list for Dustin to moderate with Pierre. And then just so you all know that we are recording this session, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared on the ILEA Hub tomorrow. So now, thank you again to all of our members for joining and to our incredible partners at Giant Enterprises again for powering today's ILEA keynote. It is my pleasure to introduce our thought leader and speaker, Pierre Marleau. So, Pierre Marleau is joining us today from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And Pierre, I hear that you just celebrated a 10-year milestone with your ILEA membership. Is this true?
Yeah, like how amazing is that? 10 years with ILEA. It's just been a great run. And you know what? On the board of governors as well, Lisa Mark, that is there,
yes,
with me as well. So we are both in our 10th anniversary.
Wow. So it sounds like we all need to head to, Calgary or to Alberta, right? Calgary, Alberta, Canada, yeah, okay, and have a little celebration with y'all. I think we can get the next flight out. So
that'd be fun.
Awesome. So we are really excited and congratulate you on your 10-year membership with ILEA. And thank you so much for being here today to share your thought leadership on a really cool subject. We also want to thank you for your continued involvement and support of ILEA and all that you do for our event community. So Pierre's lighting and production designs have appeared on stages worldwide. He has been part of mega outdoor productions, corporate events, Broadway shows, which we all miss right now, and theatrical productions and experiences for over 26 years. Pierre founded Orange Frog Productions 21 years ago and brings his theater background and lighting design experience to corporate and live events. Pierre is a longtime member and friend of ILEA, and we are so honored to have him here today to share his knowledge, research, expertise, and innovative thinking with us. Pierre, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's great to be here, and I'm quite excited to share this, this discovery or this research that we have done about UV light. So I'm going to walk you guys through today about a 35-minute presentation, and we're going to go through basically the history, how UVC works, how it connects with the virus, how it destroys it, and all that information. So we'll spend about 35 minutes. I won't get into too much technical aspect of it. I'll try to keep things fairly light, but I think it's important that we touch on some of the technology and how it works. The main reason for me for this webinar is basically, I think a lot of people are going to be coming out with UV germicidal light products. And I think it's important for people to know the question to ask and how to properly approach UVC light so that you are actually getting what you need. We are basically fighting an army of invisible viruses with invisible light. So I'm going to try to, bring a little bit of reality to all of that so that everybody can be a little bit better informed. So what I want to walk you guys through is just quick facts about UVCs. And everybody can see the slide deck, okay? So UVC light was discovered in 1847. It's been around for a long time. It was implemented for the very first time in Paris in 1903 to do water purification. It's a very well-known technology. We don't hear about it in our everyday life, But it is a very well-known technology. It's used in most water treatment plants around the world. If you had a glass of water today, chances are that that water has gone through a water purification system that uses UVC. UVC is not difficult to integrate in our life. It's actually quite simple, but there is some safety concern and it needs to be done properly. So we'll touch on safety a little bit later in this presentation. Ultraviolet radiation over the years has been studied a lot, like I said, and it's one of the most effective ways to deactivate not only viruses, but bacteria as well. So one of the great things about UVC is as we are fighting the coronavirus, we can also eliminate at the same time things like the flu and the influenza virus that are out there. So it can be a pretty powerful system once it's deployed properly. And one of the best pieces of news that we got in the past month is that the Boston University with Signified, which is the new name for Philips. So the Boston University and Philips have worked together to basically validate the effectiveness of the UVC light. And they've come up with actually a dosage. So we knew that the UVC was gonna actually be able to affect the coronavirus. We just didn't know the exact dosage. So that was a little bit of an estimation a few months ago, but now we do have very precise numbers, which is really great. So let's talk a little bit about what is UV lights and how does that break down so that we better understand, because there's quite a lot of different types of UV light. So you may have learned of UVA and UVB. So UVA light is pretty straightforward. When you go bowling, you go into a club and everything is glowing and there's the UV light everywhere that we know in the event industry. That's UVA light. It basically comes from the sun. It can be produced artificially as well. It is not stopped by the atmosphere, and it comes straight onto planet Earth. And this is what will give us a light tan. And like I said, it's what is being used mainly in the entertainment industry. When we go to UVB, UVB is partially absorbed by the atmosphere. It does makes its way to the planet, and this is what will give us a deep tan. So people that go to tanning salon, you get exposed to UVB. UVB is a middle wave. So what that means is it's not a super long wavelength, and it doesn't penetrate as deep, but it's something that when we hear about the UV index out there and people say don't stay in the sun too long because overexposure can be dangerous, they're mainly talking about UVB. Also, when you go to the dentist and they put this wand in your mouth to cure bonding agent on fillings, it's UVB that is being used to do that. And finally, the very last thing that UVB does for us, which is super important, is the production of vitamin D in our body. So UVB is quite an important part of our life. And then we go into shortwave. So the shortwave is what we call UVC. It's what's known to be a germicidal spectrum of the UV light. So UVC is fully absorbed by the ozone layer, which means it does not make it onto the planet. We have to create it artificially on the planet to be able to use it. This is why in the 80s, people were so concerned about the ozone layer being disappearing from the poles, because basically with UV lights coming, like UVC coming straight onto the globe, it could actually start killing a lot of what's living on the planet, which is not really good. And that's why we need to take some safety precaution when we use it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then finally, there's the very, very short spectrum of UV called vacuum UV. It only exists in a vacuum environment in a full ionized state. And really, it's not something we're exposed to. So we're not going to go and talk about that very much. One last thing, which is not on this picture, but I was on a radio interview a couple of days ago, and the host was asking me about this like ultra short wave UVC light. And what it basically is it's part of the spectrum close to the 200 nanometer spectrum. And that light eventually, it's not fully deployed yet. They're still studying it. But once it is fully studied and They know that it's safe. We will be able to deploy that, and it can actually be on all the time with people under it, but that technology is not available as of yet. Here's just a quick little graphic to show you the effectiveness of the UV. So when we were talking about UVA, that's the spectrum, and we can see when we look at the graph here, it's not very effective at destroying, inactivating viruses and bacteria and all that. UVB starts to be a little bit better. We see that curve is going up. And then when we go into UVC, we can see this is where the maximum strength is. Now, the maximum strength of UVC is the 265 nanometer wavelength. Unfortunately, we're not able to produce that wavelength as of yet. They are working on LED technology that will be able to do that. But right now, the closest we get, and again, we'll touch base with that with the Philips bulb that we use in our business. It's 254, I think, is what the frequency is. So we're at about 80% of the full effectiveness is what exists in the marketplace. So let's talk quickly about how does the virus work and how does it invade your body? Because it's great to talk about it to destroy it, but if we don't understand how it works, it makes it a little bit challenging. So it's pretty straightforward. Think about a virus the same way a computer virus works. So what a virus is it's not a living organism. It's actually a piece of DNA. It's a piece of code or a piece of RNA. So what happens is that piece of code, just like a USB stick or an email that comes through your computer, takes over a cell in your body, and it basically tells it, stop doing what you're doing, and now you're going to become a photocopy machine, and you're going to make a whole bunch of duplicate of me, and then I'm going to make you work so hard that eventually you'll explode, releasing all of these copy of myself, and then I'll be able to infect other cells in the body. So that's kind of how a virus works. So basically UVC and how it can really helps with viruses is you can see here on this graphic, the incoming UV photon. So basically UV light is producing photon that hits the DNA strand. And as it does that, it actually breaks the link of the DNA. So it corrupts the code. And by doing that, it's preventing the virus from reproducing itself. So it does not destroy it. All it does is basically deactivate it. So the virus loses its ability to be able to tell a cell to reproduce itself. So, and it's been used through the past 100 years to fight different virus and bacteria that have come in our world, everything from SARS to MARS to the COVID P9 to tuberculosis, like a long time ago. So it's something that has been proven effective for a very long time. So one of the best news about UVC right now and our current situation, which is the coronavirus, is that UVC is the most effective on viruses. And then as we go down this arrow, like it's a little less effective on vegetative bacteria. And then finally on spores and fungi, that's where it's the least effective. It still is effective. We just need to put a much larger dose to be able to destroy those different components. So right now, the great news is that the viruses, and particularly the coronavirus, requires a very, very small dose to be able to neutralize it, which is really awesome for us. So I'm not going to get into too deep of the science behind it all, but just to give you guys an idea here, if you look at this graph where it says coronavirus, we can see here, like this is not the first coronavirus that we're exposed to. There's been many, particularly in the past 20 years. So we've seen before the Baron virus, the canine coronavirus, the SARS, the murine. There's been a bunch of different versions. And as we can see here, the number that next to it is the amount of dose that we need to expose that particular virus to neutralize it. So there's been a wide range and a wide array from a dose of 14 joule per square meter all the way down to 482 joules per square meter. And the great news is that the lights out there can actually deactivate all of those. It's just a matter of controlling the amount of dosage, so how much light we need to expose. Like I was saying, the Signify, which is Philips, and the Boston University have been working on a study since the beginning of the corona crisis. And they have come up with basically some great result, which right now we only need 5 microjoules per square centimeters to be able to reduce the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the coronavirus we keep talking about. What that means is that basically with the dosage of 22 millijoules per square centimeters, we can destroy the virus in 25 seconds. So it's quite effective, it's quite fast. And there's a bunch of formula we use to get ourselves there. I won't bore you guys with that, but I think it's just important to know what that is. So again, this is another graph that just shows here, like, you know, the different sources, where the information came from, the amount of dosage we need to expose to be able to destroy these different viruses. So here I have a little video about 2 weeks ago. There was, I think 237 scientists came out and said there's new information that is leading us to believe that the virus can actually be airborne. So I'm just going to play this little clip from CNN for a second.
Hey, Professor Olstrom, 239 scientists or so from around the world published a letter asking the WHO to be more clear in explaining how coronavirus can transmit in the air. The organization confirmed there is emerging evidence, though that was their term, of airborne transmission. Can you explain what that means for our lives every day?
Yeah, well, first of all, when we talk about respiratory transmitted viruses, we're talking about what comes out of our breathing tract or we cough. And there are very small particles, if I could liken them, the size of marbles. There are particles the size of bowling balls, and there's everything in between. And what the WHO said is it basically is just those big particles that fall out close by you, and that's where you have to be. And in fact, these particles we call aerosols, the things that float in the air. The next time you're in your home and you see the sunlight peering in the window and you see all that dust floating there and think, oh my, I have a dusty house. That's an aerosol. When I talk, sitting here in the studio right now, I'm filling the studio with these aerosols. You can't see them, but they're there. They have virus. And so what this group is saying to the WHO, you have to understand that aerosols themselves can transmit this virus. They can float in the air for some time, and it's not just those that you cough out or sneeze out that are going to continue to spread this disease. And the data, I think, are compelling to support their message.
Hey, Professor Olstrom,
So I think this was new information a few weeks ago. And I think it's important for us to realize that, you know, it's not just, especially in the event industry, that it's not just, you know, large particle, that it can be atomized. And if you put a lot of people in a space, can become a little bit of a challenge. So, so for us, I think it opens something interesting, which is basically, we need to start thinking about UV light as an additional layer of protection. So being able to purify the air, being able to purify the surface. But one of the important things is that UV light is not a silver bullet. It is not an end-all be-all solution to all of our problem. I think it should be deployed as a multi-layer disinfection protocol. So I think, you know, on lots of webinars that I have been in the past few months, like a lot of event planners and a lot of people in our industries are all worried about, you know, what if I do an event and somebody gets sick? What's going to happen to me? And I think one of the important things here is that I think, and I'm not a lawyer, so I just would assume that the more you can do to make your environment safe and inform people of what you're doing, the better protected you will be if you end up in front of a judge somewhere. So for me, what I like about the UV light, it doesn't mean stop disinfecting surfaces. It doesn't mean stop cleaning. We had some client that say, if I put that in the washroom, that means I only have to wash the washroom once a day. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Like, all it means is that, you know, as you are cleaning surfaces, there's studies that have come out that says that people can clean an entire room and miss about 50 to 60% of surfaces that are touch point. Well, if you have somebody disinfecting the space and on top of that, you run a UV system, chances are that you're increasing your odds of catching everything. So it's very much about controlling the amount of virus that can be both in the air and in the surface. And the great thing is, as the UV travels through the air, it will deactivate everything it touches in the air as well, which is really great. So one of the things I said early in this presentation, that one of the most important thing for me was giving you the tools to make sure that when you hire people to help you with UV light, that there's actually like some sort of a control system, because it sounds like voodoo to me. Like even when I first was reading about it, I'm like, okay, well, you know, COVID is invisible. I can't see it. And I'm going to use an invisible light. And then I'm going to, you know, push a button and I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell a client it's done. Like, you're safe. Everything is good. Well, I sort of was struggling with that concept, because we at our company were very focused on quality and control, and we're really, really big into safety. So we did a little bit of research, and there's basically like a way to control the dose and to actually like really get like an actual test strip to be able to test what you have done. So just like on your hot tub, when you put your chemicals in and then you know, drop the little drops, or you put the little piece of paper in the hot tub and it tells you the amount of chlorine or chemical that's in your tub. This is the same thing. We put these stickers throughout the space, and then the stickers will get exposed to the UV light. And then once the cycle is done, we look at all the stickers and see if they've changed to the right color. And then, as you can see on this little strip on my screen here, the darker it gets, the longer the exposure. And again, the strips are longer than that. Like I could only fit this much on my screen. But basically, we're able to control what we've done. And then if we run the cycle through a room and we look at it and we go, oh my God, like we didn't do quite the right appropriate exposure, there's many different ways to change the exposure. So we can let the light run longer, we can add more light, we can bring the light closer to the surface. So that's kind of where the control system is important, because we want to make sure that whatever we say we're going to do, that we are actually doing. So whatever supplier is coming, it's important that people do that for us. We talked about safety a little bit earlier in the presentation. Safety is important. UVC is fundamentally something really easy for us to control. A double layer of clothing. So if you were to wear 2 t-shirts on yourself or 2 long sleeve shirts, that would be enough to block UVC. It also does not go through glass. So it will not go, like if you have a boardroom that's got glass all the way around, you can run the UVC light and it will not be going through the glass. So what we say though is that it's super important that when you run UVC product, that you do not have animals or humans in the space. So you just close the doors, put a sign on the door, just say that things are gonna, that we're gonna run a cycle and basically prevent people from going in. For us, what was important when we started looking, we were trying to find products that basically have a safety feature built in that would make it safer for us to use this product. So we recommend that you find a product, if you're going to purchase, that has a motion detection built in, so that if somebody walks into the room, the light will shut down automatically. We also recommend an audible alarm. So a lot of the devices out there have an audible alarm, not very loud, but it just makes a little bleeping sound so that while the cycle is working, that is running. So before you run into the room, if you hear the sound, you know that this is going on. Also a visual alarm. Most of them have a blinking light, just like you would see on a towing or on a scissor lift. So that's important as well. They have a remote control. So make sure you have a remote control so that you can remote start it from outside the room. Also that it has a delayed start, so that by the time you push the button and you start it, there's a little bit of a delay, a 1 or 2 minutes delay where the audible alarm and the blinking alarm is going, so that it just, if somebody by mistake is in the room, they can get out of there. So those are things that we think are quite important. Also in our research, one of the things we found is that not all products are made equal. And for us, it was really important to find like the actual device itself. So the actual lighting fixture, it can be made, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, some people might be concerned sometime about buying something that's made in China or that, you know, maybe of a lower grade. But the reality is that the enclosure and how it works, that is important. It needs to be well fabricated, but the bulb that that is powering that device is what's the most important. So right now we have found that the Philips TUV bulbs are the best bulbs on the market in our opinion. Now there is other manufacturer like Osram and Sylvania, and like there's other manufacturers out there, but make sure that the bulb that is powering the devices are actually made from reputable lighting bulb manufacturer. So if you end up having things that have no names or all of that, it's hard to tell the effectiveness of those bulbs. So it's important right now. The Philips bulbs is at 253.7 nanometer, which is 85% of the maximum germicidal effect. So that's really good, and that's taken into account in all the calculations we do to figure out how much light and how much time we need to sterilize a room. Also, the bulb is made with a special glass that is a sodium barium glass. It lets the UVC go through it, because I was saying earlier that UVC cannot go through glass. So this particular glass lets UVC go through it, and that's super important. And it also prevents the release of ozone, which can be quite harmful to human. Also, the UVC bulb has a 9,000 hour lifespan. So sometimes people ask like, well, do I need to change these bulbs all the time? If you think that a cycle may run 15 minutes to an hour, depending on the size of the room, and you do that once or twice a day, you know, in a year, you'll run about 600 hours. So the bulb will be good for quite a lot of years, and they're easy to change. One of the things, like, you know, I say, be aware there on the side of my slide. And one of the important things is one of the manufacturers we work with, they wanted to know what was out there. So they basically bought online from a bunch of different manufacturers, from everything from Amazon to Alibaba to, you know, like whatever they could find. They bought 20 products and they brought them to their labs and they started doing some tests, and they were able to borrow from the University of Brussels in Belgium. They were able to borrow some equipment to be able to test the frequency of the lights. And what they found is out of the 20 products that they had bought, those were all basically novelty products that did a blue light. They might have been in the UVA spectrum or very lightly in the UVB spectrum, but they did not get all the way down to the UVC spectrum. So again, I'm not saying that there's not good stuff out there. I'm just saying be careful. It's easy to just go online and buy a $20 device that claims to do all this, and maybe it does, but if you don't have the technology to be able to test it, then you know, it puts you in a weird position. So make sure that what you buy is good quality and that it does really what it says it does. So just trust trusted brands like Philips. Let's talk quickly about implementation and how that all works. So basically, implementation, surface purification is one of the things that it's used for a lot. Like I said, it's been around for a long time in food processing. Before, when you buy ham or, you know, like processed meat that is inside a vacuum sealed pack, before it is vacuum sealed, all the meat is run through a UVC process. And all it does is it basically neutralizes all the bacteria, and it will extend the life of the product in the packaging for 2 to 3 to 4 more days without having to add any preservative or conservation agent, which is really great. It's also really good for surface cleaning. People have been cleaning money, like just being able to disinfect money, surfaces, all of that. One of the things I like about it is that right now, I don't know, we're all washing our hands all the time, and we need to continue to do that because there's not a UVC solution for that, but you know, we're exposed to lots of harsh chemical. So what I like is that by using this, we could use soap to clean and then come over with UVC and maybe not have to use as much harsh chemical on all surfaces. It's also used in air purification. So it's being used in a big building. If you are in a big tower somewhere right now, chances are if there's central air or if there's central heating coming through the building, in the coils down in the basement or on the roof where all the filters and stuff are, UVC is being used to control mold and mildew and bacteria as well. So chances are your air is being purified. And like I said earlier, in liquid purification. So it's being used in ponds and swimming pools, in drinking water, in wastewater. Like it's something that's being used every day. So quite powerful things. Possible application for people on the call and all of us, really, it's amazing. Every time I talk to a new client or I meet somebody and I start talking about UV, they go, oh, wow, I never thought about this. Do you think it could be used for this particular approach? And we have found so many different ways to deploy the product. So we had the RCMP, which is the Canadian Police Force, on a Zoom call with us. And they wanted to sterilize, disinfect their mail through their mailroom because they fly mail from location to location across the country. And they were like, well, how do we protect our pilots? So now they want to implement a system where they will irradiate everything with UVC before it gets loaded on the plane as a way to protect their pilot, because a lot of people want to protect their employees and their staff. And that's a great way to do it. So basically, you can deploy these things in boardroom, staff lounge, offices, meeting room, shipping and receiving areas. Now there's new little boxes that have been created that are the size of a mini bar fridge, where you can put makeup and phones and glasses for eye shops and all that kind of stuff. Temporary tents when there's a wedding. You know, you've had a bunch of workers work in there and put everything up. Well, just before guests come in, maybe you run through a UV disinfection cycle just to make sure that the whole surface is disinfected. Lots of, you know, like I was saying, makeup, beauty salon, hair care professional, in elevators and hotels. Like I think there's such an opportunity for hotels and ballrooms to be able to deploy this technology, like to be able to have you know, somebody that's cleaning your room, like you're exposing your staff to possible, you know, biohazard in the room. So what if you had a device that you just go and put in the room temporary, because a lot of these devices can be deployed temporary. And so your cleaning person opens the door, deploys the UV light in the room, walks out, let it run through a cycle. And then by the time they re-enter the room to clean the room, well, you've already eliminated a big portion of what's on the surface. It will not disinfect what it cannot see. So if there is bed sheets that are piled on top of one another, like the UV light will not be able to disinfect what it cannot see. So it does not get into every crack and crannies, but it will disinfect, you know, surfaces. So on top of everything. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we're using this technology, is that, you know, if you're disinfecting your shoes, well, the very tip of your shoe, chances are that you're not going to be able to get light there. So that's one of the things to keep in mind as well. So for us, we found some products online that we're quite happy with and that we recommend. So I'm not going to get into brands and stuff right now, but basically there's UV lights that are permanently installed. This is what this product is. So it gets permanently mounted on the wall. It has a switch with a key that you can basically turn it on. It has all the safety function, and you can deploy that in a boardroom, in hotel rooms, in ballrooms, and basically just run it before you have guests coming in. With the dosage that we're talking about now, like we don't need hours and hours to be able to disinfect a room. So things can be done as quickly as 3 to 5 minutes. So depending again on the amount of lights and the size of a room. So I think we live in a world where we need to, I found myself a few weeks ago having to go to an award. There was some Canadian special event award, and we did a viewing party in our town, and I questioned myself, do I want to be around 50 other person? And you know, and my wife was like, well, you should really go, because it's about your industry, and if you don't believe that people can gather, then you know, what are we doing here? And the reality is, I think if somebody had told me, well, the room has been disinfected with UVC on top of everything else, it may have added one more layer of security to me. So I think a lot of it, I'm just realizing I'm an event professional and I can be worried sometimes. So I can only imagine if you're part of the public and you're not, and you don't have all that information, you know, I think it's about reassuring our customers and making sure that we, you know, show people that we're doing everything we can to make it a safe environment for them. We talked a little bit about the air component earlier, and I didn't go into great details, but there is a lot of air purification unit. This is one of them. And basically what it does is it has a chamber with the UV tube inside of it, and the light cannot come out of it, but the air gets sucked into a chamber and then expulsed on the other side. And it will capture all of the particle up in the air. So out of a few studies, they were saying that 30% of the virus is actually in suspension in the air and 70% lands on surfaces. So if you have a combination of both surface and air disinfection, you become that much more effective. There is, like I was saying, these little mini bar fridge that have come out now where you're able to put lots of smaller stuff. So it could be everything from, not that we use a lot of money these days, like in terms of like bills, but you can put, you know, change bills, glasses, mask. A lot of people are reusing masks because PPE is hard to come by sometimes. So these devices actually have a little heating portion to them and the UV portion. So it can dry up the mask and sterilize them in as little as 15 minutes. Again, some people will say, well, you know, what if there is a little bit of virus like in a crease somewhere? Absolutely. This is not a silver bullet. If there is, you know, if there's a crease, if there is something where the light cannot reach that portion of it, it will not disinfect it. But I think a lot of it is about controlling our amount of exposure. It's about, you know, like some people have said, well, what if there's a crack in my phone and bacteria has gotten deep into the crack? Well, chances are the UV light might not be able to get it there, but same thing with an alcohol solution, short of you dipping your phone into an alcohol solution so that it can get into all the little bits. The alcohol will only disinfect what it's touching. So I think the more we can do, like if we can do a multiple layer approach, the more we can accomplish. So again, more products here so you can see what they look like. Most of them will radiate all the way around, front and back, and they will disinfect, you know, a room in 15 to an hour, depending on the size of it and the power of the light. So that's basically it for my presentation. I hope it was helpful, and I'd love to basically hear your question and see if we can help you with information.
Awesome. Thank you, Pierre. That was awesome and informative, and at moments a bit overwhelming, but
I apologize for that.
No, don't apologize. It's such great information, and we do have a bunch of questions here, so let's get cracking on them.
Great.
Okay. So can you implement UVC in uplighting or a light source that is not directly visible to people, or is it more of a zap?
No, it's not a zap. So it's an exposure. So just think of it like if you were to use like a spray gun, like a paint spray gun. So if you want to cover an entire room, you have to go over and over and over until you accomplish the amount of paint you want to put on. So with the UV light, it's the same thing. So the UV light should never be in an uplight if there's people in the room, because it will bounce off walls and stuff, and it will reach people. And when you get exposed to it, like, you know, you can get exposed to it for a little amount of time and you'll feel a little burning, tingling sensation on your skin, just like you would if you were in the sun, or like if somebody was welding. When people are welding and people get their eyes all red and it hurts, like that's UVC. So so you don't want to be around it. So it should never be deployed in an uplight or any kind of lighting fixture. And it's not a zap. It's something that's done over time.
Awesome. This is a great question. Do you know about studies related to UV residual on surfaces that can be affecting to humans?
So that's one of the great things, and it is an awesome question, actually. So in all the research we did, what we've been told and what we've read is that you cannot overexpose. So you could expose all night long if you want, and there's nothing residual once it's done. Also, the devices that we've tested and that we've looked at, they do not have any kind of, what are these? They don't have any kind of electronic radiation that can affect like pacemakers and all those different things. So they are very safe that way. The only thing that UVC, where it can be a problem over time, is exposure to plastic. So on metal, it is inert. On ceramics, it doesn't do anything, but on plastic, on anything that is organic, and plastics have organic compounds, it will affect them over time. So it will make them more brittle over time, and it will also discolor them over time. So that's where UVC can really be a challenge. Again, when we talk to experts that are in the plastic field, what they're telling us is lots of plastic have been actually treated with a UV resistant treatment. So it's really a matter of looking at your specific product. Again, it's not like exposing for 15 minutes a day for 3 years is going to destroy the product. Think of it the same way children slide outside in a playground, where basically it's in the sun, for 18 hours a day, like for a long period of time. So again, for the amount of exposure we're talking about, I don't see that being a real concern.
Great. I think you answered this, but I want to ask it again. Does this work in large open areas like a theater auditorium?
It does, and that's where it's the most effective, and that's where I think it can really be a game changer for us. Because imagine in a movie theater, imagine in a boardroom, imagine basically clearing the room, just like when it's time to take photos, right? And every event planner is like, get out of the room, we need to take pictures. I've been down that path a million times. So we do the same thing, but with UV light. So we run a 15-minute cycle, 20-minute cycles, and it just needs to be planned in our process. And then it will disinfect plate surfaces, like your stencils that have been put down, like it will do all that. Again, the thing that's important to remember is it will not disinfect under the table or under the plate, so we just need to be smart about how we approach it. Not a silver bullet, but still a very, very effective way to control our space and maybe to get us back to work, right? Like, because we're all hitching here to go.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Maybe just some clarification around disinfecting the air and the difference between the two devices. They are different devices, correct?
They are. So basically, disinfecting the air, what you're trying to do is you're trying to recirculate the entire volume of a room through a device twice an hour. That's what we try to do. So you put, there's a studio in Belgium where they basically, it's sort of a little television / event space. And the bee air that you were looking at, they suspended them up in the air vertically, and they put them about 4 meters apart, so 12 feet apart in every direction. And what it did is it takes all of the atomized saliva and viruses and stuff, and it takes it from under, and it spits it out from above and repressurize the room to basically push everything down. So it controls both airflow and disinfects the room. So I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like I went on a really cold. So.
No, I think so. I think different devices. Yes.
Different devices. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just, I've become a nerd now. Like
you definitely have. You definitely have. What UV is used to clean hands in restrooms?
There is none of that, because you should not be exposed to UV light. So there might be sometime a little bit of UVB in something, and sometime you will see a blue light shining somewhere, but UVC should never be on your skin. You should not be exposed to it.
Got you. So maybe just talk a little bit about how you calculate the amount of light you need. So the specific question, how large are the devices and how many do you need to disinfect a ballroom?
Right. So they come in a variety of different sizes. So there's everything from little desk lamp versions that will do like a bedroom, and they come in much larger unit that can do a much larger space. So again, the question is, I know I was talking to a gentleman in Las Vegas yesterday that just reached out, and he has a service down there where he basically shows up with portable units and disinfects spaces for people. So there is people out there that are providing services to be able to do that. And again, if you want to do a permanent installation, I think for lots of hotels, ballroom, a permanent installation is a great solution because you just turn the light. Depending on the volume of your ballroom, you may need 5 lights, you may need 1 light, you may need 30 lights. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how much time you want to turn that over. So the way we do the calculation is we know the joules per square meter that we need of exposure. We basically double the amount of exposure to make sure that we cover everything. And by doing that, we're eliminating the influenza and the cold virus at the same time. So, you know, might as well not catch the cold if we can. Like if we're going through all the trouble, might as well do it for other viruses and bacterias. And then we basically calculate the volume of the room, and we put that through a lighting program that just tells us exactly how to do coverage. So it's the same thing as if you were to light a ballroom and you need to, you know, light the whole surface with a texture or with a gobo or whatever. The UV light is the same thing. So how many lights do I need to cover that surface? And a light at this distance will give you that much of those over that amount of surface. So I don't know if that helps, but
yeah,
there's a little bit of a design involved into it. And so don't just go and buy something, make sure that you buy it from an expert who can actually like come up with a plan and deploy it like for you properly.
I think
But it's
that's
not complicated. That's why you need geeks like me, like, because it's not that complicated.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think you've reinforced it a couple times that this does need some technical work, and it's not something that that you can just buy online and deploy yourself without the research and the education to make sure that what you're doing is deployed properly.
That's exactly it. You want to make sure, like, you know, because ultimately, I think the biggest that I know for me as a business owner, we've deployed that in our shop. Like, so we now have in our receiving dock, when a truck comes back, we'll put a light inside the truck to be able to, you know, disinfect partially. And that way our employees are, you know, touching something that's been disinfected. So we're really, our employees are important to us and we're trying to protect them to the best of our abilities. But I think the whole point of this UV system is, I think if ever you were drawn to court, I know for me in my business, I want to be able to, you know, tell the court, listen, we did disinfect, we did wear a mask, we did wash our hands, we had the policies, everything was on the wall. And on top of that, we did do UVC. So I really don't know what else I could have done. Like I've really, you know, and if something new comes up in a year from now, we'll be on the cutting edge of that. But for now, I feel that the UV is that extra step that nobody is taking, or very little amount of people are taking because they don't know about it. And it's not that expensive to deploy either. You're not looking at spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a ballroom. So that's one of the things that's important. Like we've done some, you know, when I was talking about the little mini bar fridge, like it's something that's about $1,500 to $2,000, $1,500 to $2,000 in your currency in the country you're in. So US dollars in US, Canada, and you know, I don't know what it is in pounds. I know we have some guests from the UK, but those products are available around the world, and you're not looking at crazy amount of money. So for instance, we had hairdressers buying the little mini bar fridge and going like, well, I could buy new scissors to be able to do 5 clients, and they're $300 a pair, or 2 of us can buy one of those things and we can disinfect between clients, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great. Yeah.
Another great question here, just about one of the safety features that I know is there. If an unwitting client walks into a room while it's on, what happens? And then maybe just talk a little bit about what exposure, little bits of exposure will do.
So this is an awesome question. Thank you for asking that, actually. And so basically, with all the safety devices, the motion sensor will capture right away that somebody has opened the door. So you could just push the door a little bit, the system shuts down automatically. It will expose you less than a few seconds, like if the system was delayed for whatever reason. So if you're coming in from a corner and the sensor didn't capture you, like you might be exposed to a few seconds. Depending on the dosage, you can be under UVC light for as much as 6 or 7 hours a day, and for as little as 5 minutes a day, like depending on how much exposure you get. It's not something that a one-time exposure is going to be very dangerous. It's just that a repeat exposure becomes a problem. Just like if you were to look at somebody welding without a mask over and over, eventually you would grow cataracts and you'd have to have your eyes you know, worked on. So it's the same idea here. Fundamentally, it's very, very safe. It's easy to block, like clothing will block it. So short of you walking in a ballroom naked and having deactivated everything, you know, yeah.
Awesome.
Hopefully that answers the question.
No, that was great. A couple more questions about cost here. I think we've addressed that. In addition to factoring in the size of a space, how do you factor in the rate of air treatment based on occupancy?
So basically right now, what we recommend is to do like an air exchange like 2 times an hour. Now, those are minimum sort of like minimum recommendations. And then for a client, if somebody goes, well, for me, I'm going to have people in the space, I want to do like 5 times an hour, I want to do 10 times an hour, then we just adjust the air purification according to that. And it might be something that's already implemented in your building. It might be something where the air circulation in your building is actually already going through a UV system. I think a lot of the air purification system that for us we're talking about is in smaller room more than in larger rooms. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Somebody just put a note in here that schools need these in order to open safely, and I agree. I think that's a great application for them.
More.
Yeah. And I think we're out of time. I have a couple questions lingering here that I think I'm going to connect you with Pierre directly. They're kind of more geeky questions that that I think you can jam on offline.
No problem.
And yeah, thank you everybody for those questions. Thanks for all those answers, Pierre. It's amazing how fast an hour goes by. I'm going to throw Pierre's contact information into the chat box here.
Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like even if you're from another country, we may have some partners or friends or people we know, or, you know, like I said, this gentleman from Vegas called me yesterday and it sounds like he's got a great business down there. So there's people out there that can help you. And I think this can be a great way for us to get back to some sort of a normal, which we desperately need.
Absolutely. And I echo that. I have the pleasure of working with Pierre a lot and for many, many years. And Pierre and I are working on solutions for my own business. So for those of you that are, I think you recognized on this webinar that this technology and this application is really for a wide variety of disciplines in our industry. So if you have any more questions, I welcome you to reach out to Pierre. If you need advice, if you need whatever, Pierre is the man to help you out with that. And obviously, if you're looking to deploy this technology in your space or in your business, reach out to Pierre and he can set you up with everything that you need. Thank you, Pierre, for this. It was a great session.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing to learn more and talk about UVC. I never thought I would say those words.
Same here.
This is great. Thank you for everybody that attended today. Always such a great turnout. Thanks again to all of our ILEA members for supporting ILEA and allowing us to put on these great sessions. A huge thank you to Giants Enterprises for always supporting us. They've been a longtime supporter and friend of ILEA, and we couldn't do any of this without them. I hope everybody has an amazing rest of the week. It's only Tuesday, but hopefully it's not 115 degrees all week for some of you. And yeah, this is the end. I'll let you guys continue on with your days. Thanks again, Pierre. Thank you, Tiffany, for all you do. And of course, to our headquarters team, thank you for all you do. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks.